Hello, friends. I just want to go over a concept called friends don't let friends chase TSH. And by friend, meaning yourself. So be your best friend with this and look broader when we're talking about TSH. Now, if you have no idea what TSH is, then it's probably not been an issue for you. But the people that have thyroid issues, they've been chasing TSH for most of their medical experience. Why is that? Well, because doctors use TSH to assume the health of the thyroid. And if TSH is off, then they're going to assume the thyroid is off. If it's high, usually the thyroid is assumed to be underperforming. And what is it underperforming? It's underperforming T4. This is the quote-unquote inactive form of thyroid hormone. If it's overperforming, then it's usually overperforming or overproducing T4 and or the active form of thyroid T3. What the reality is that it starts in the brain with the pituitary telling the thyroid through TSH to produce T4. And so if TSH is high, not producing assumed enough T4, then most often someone is prescribed Synthroid, a synthetic version of T4. And so then they'll track TSH to see if it comes down within normal ranges to assume that, okay, you're good or not. Now, with this said, if you are on Synthroid, feel fantastic, killing life, nothing's inhibiting you, like ignore the rest. But if you're on Synthroid or some other version of thyroid hormone, even with TSH being normal and you feel like complete garbage, you're gaining weight, you're still depressed, low energy, all of that, then it's probably not a primary thyroid issue. There's other things that are going to impact this. So for example, it can just be the brain communication. That thyroid is more on this parasympathetic state of the nervous system, so kind of the rest and digest, where the pituitary is also talking to the fight or flight side. And you're more familiar with, say, adrenals. So if this communication here to here is more dominant, then this will suffer. Now, part of the rest of the equation here is T4 typically goes through the liver to then convert to T3, and then the T3, which is the active form, either goes to the DNA to complete your metabolic pathway and or it sends feedback to the pituitary to be like, we've got enough, keep TSH regular, or we have too much, slow the brakes down, or we don't have enough, ramp it up type of thing. So there's a lot that can inhibit and interfere with this whole cycle of things. One can be just the nervous system communicating more fight or flight. You have a lot on your plate. You're going through a rough period of life. You don't eat well, so there's deficiencies. You're exposed to things, there's toxicities, you name it. Anything that's going to get you proponent out of danger is going to inhibit and usually counter the thyroid. Now, with T4 going through T3, there can be a couple things. One is going to be partly your blood sugars. Now, this can be from what you eat, so carbohydrates, being imbalanced with your proteins and fats and all that type of stuff. It can be high stress loads, also dumping cortisol and blood sugars and all that fun stuff. The point of it is, if blood sugars are not being utilized well, usually we have too much insulin, and when the first place we become insulin resistant is going to be the liver. So this will slow down that conversion. Now, the other side of adrenals, which also happen to share the same building block, so say tyrosine, are things what we call the catecholamines. So this would be like dopamine, epinephrine, but also melanin. So think dopamine, pleasure and motivation, think epinephrine, energy, think melanin, skin issues, you name it. If you're really in danger, tyrosine will dump down into production of thing called cytokines. which could be quinolinate or picolinate. What are cytokines? These signal the immune response. The immune response is partly antibody. Now, if you have Hashimoto's or Graves', you're in part of this, where these antibodies now, and they go pick on thyroid hormone production. Antibodies could also pick on the DNA. This would be more like ANA, where, for example, the one coming up here would be like TPO. So there can be a stopgap in the production or a stopgap in the receiving of those hormones. The other part of the immune response is inflammation. This is also mitigated by the liver. And so you'll see things on blood work like, say, CRP, and there's a host of other ones. So we could have your thyroid being disrupted because of just nervous system imbalance. We could have it being disrupted because of insulin resistance. We could have it disrupted due to inflammation. We could have it disrupted due to autoimmune. We could have it disrupted due to deficiencies of raw material. We could have it, another one, let's say, there's where the 4 and 3, so the number of iodines, it could be a consumption or a competition because iodine competes with, look at column 17 of your periodic table with chlorine and fluorine and bromide and all those types of things. Those compete. It could be, say, not enough sodium because sodium drives iodine into the thyroid, so it can be an electrolyte issue. So the point of it is you can't base your thyroid function solely on this one lab value. So you can see the host of other things that have to be considered, other tests that you'd probably want to run, organic acids, a gut test. I like GI map. Why is that? Well, most of your immune response happens within your gut. And so part of the gut can be the ecosystem of your microbes. So do we have beneficial ones? Do we have opportunistic ones? Do we have outright pathogenic ones? What's the digestive tract looking like? Do we have gut inflammatory? Do we have leaky gut? Do we process our fats? Do we have sufficient pancreatic function? Like all these things are going to affect the gut ecosystem from mouth out the other end, which then will affect your thyroid expression. So there's a lot of things that will impact thyroid, but then also vice versa, your thyroid will impact things. So the chicken or the egg argument will never be solved by only testing a TSH. So move forward by asking for better and more comprehensive testing. Your doctor probably won't do it because it's dictated by your insurance company, because if your TSH is fine, then there's no reason to test the rest of it, even if you feel like complete garbage. They might throw in a T4, they might throw antibodies, hard to say. Here's where you have to go outside of the system to go to somebody like me, hint, hint, that can look at a plethora of testing that's not inhibited by your insurance company, that's just between you and provider, and decisions are made between you two and not a third party that's in the business of denial. So hopefully this actually doesn't make sense. Hopefully it opens your eyes a little bit that, hey, there's more to this story than what meets the eye in my yearly annual blood work of TSH, and that if I'm not feeling great, if my energy is low, if I'm depressed, if I'm gaining weight, if I'm, you name it, blah, 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 that we have to test systems, not just one isolated analyte, and then blame a symptom on that. So have a great day, and I look forward to hearing from you.